Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today's meeting of the South West Local Area Committee is open to the public, and a warm welcome to all of you tonight. My name is Councillor Andrew Sanger, and I am the Chair of the South West Local Area Committee. Before I ask other councillors to introduce themselves, I will hand over to the committee clerk to read out the housekeeping arrangements.
Good evening, thank you very much, Chair. Before we start, just a few housekeeping arrangements. Please can I ask that mobile telephones and other such equipment are switched to silent mode so as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. There's no fire test planned for today. If there is, instructions from council staff present. The assembly point is straight out. Is a data controller under the Data Protection Act. Data collected during this webcast will be retained in accordance with the Council's published policy. By entering the meeting room, you are consenting to be filmed and to the possible use of those images and sound recordings for webcasting. One final thing to mention, and it's an apology, we don't have any hearing loops available this evening, I'm afraid.
Okay, thank you very much, John. So can I please ask members and officers around the table to introduce themselves? So we'll start with John.
Sorry, my name is John Turner, Democratic Services.
Hello, my name's Cliff Woodcraft, one of the councillors for Forward.
Ruth Nelson, one of the councillors in Crooks and Crosspool.
Minesh Parekh, Labour and Cooperative Councillor for Crooks and Crosspool.
Tim Hagan, Councillor for Crooks and Crosspool.
Roger Davison, Councillor for Ecclesall.
Tanya Bustamante, South West LAC Area Manager.
Sue Alston, Councillor for Forward.
Colin Ross, Councillor for Dore and Totley.
Jordan, Councillor for Dore and Totley.
Martin Smith, Dore and Totley.
Sheffield Mohammed, Ecclesall Ward.
Barbara Masters, Ecclesall Ward.
Okay, thank you, colleagues. Before we proceed with the agenda, I'd like to explain how tonight's meeting will work. To start with, we'll deal with the formal business of apologies, declarations and minutes of the last meeting. We'll then have up to 30 minutes of public questions and answers. We'll then move on to a brief update of the South West LAC Community Plan, which Tanya Bustamante will present. And then we'll close the meeting, the formal part of the meeting, and we will invite you to visit our partner stands, which are set out to your left and right. So you can find out more about the services they offer and how you can get more involved or take things back to the group that you represent. Okay, right. Item 2, apologies for absence.
No apologies received, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Item 3, exclusion of the public and press. There are no items that require the exclusion of the public and press tonight. Item 4, declarations of interest. Can I ask any members who wish to declare an interest in any of the items of business on the agenda? No. Okay. Item 5, minutes of the previous meeting. So these are on page 9. So can we?
A comment, please, Chair.
Okay, Councillor Masters.
Page 10, B, just at the first paragraph below 3. I mean, it says I provided a response, and what I did was had been assured Ms. Clark had been provided with a response. I didn't provide it myself. It was provided by another member, by a LAC officer. Thank you.
Did you get that?
I've got that.
Okay, are there any other points of correction or clarification? Can we agree? Sorry.
Check the PC on page 12. Questions that were answered last meeting. I asked regarding indoor bowls and examining the minutes of indoor crowd report, and it wasn't particularly flattering. I want to make that point clear.
Okay, thank you. We will make that correction. So what was that? So okay, so with those 3 corrections and clarifications, can we agree the minutes of the last meeting? Colleagues, can we agree them? Thank you very much. Okay, so item 6, public questions and petitions. I've got notice of 5 questions. I'm sure there might be 1 or 2 others, but we'll start with those. So I don't know where the microphone is in the room. Anyway, so could Paul May go to the microphone, or could the microphone be found for Paul May?
Press it once, and then when you're finished, you press it again to take it off.
Yep.
See that it's on now.
Okay, I've got 3 questions, and I've got them written out and brought my neat copy with me, but there we are. The first one, in the minutes, it seems to have been answered. It was the fact that at the minute it is not possible to cross that road without traffic coming at you. There is no time. So I presented that petition on behalf of residents of Ecclesall, and it was denied at that time for all sorts of reasons. But I just thought it would be worthwhile bringing it up again, possibly underneath the transport safety session on the plan. So that's what I'd like to do. I don't know if anybody wants to reply to that.
So Mr. May, have you got a 3rd question?
Yes, I'm trying to remember what it was. Have you got it?
I've got it.
Jog my memory.
It's to do with the toolkit of policy.
Oh, yes. Yes, all the committees in the council I read have got a toolkit of 12 items which they should be addressing in terms of making sure that you're communicating with the population, as it were. So my question was, I'd like to know what's in that toolkit that the councillors are looking at when they have their committee meetings.
Okay, thank you, Mr. May, for those 3 questions. I'm obviously very pleased that we are now publishing the questions and answers in the minutes, and we'll make sure we do that to the questions we get today. In terms of the road crossing, I'm glad we had some clarity, because I have sent officers back to look at that, thinking it was in the last 12 or 24 months, but obviously we've got clarification that it's 5 years. I think, it's clearly up to you what you would like to do, but from our point of view, at the moment, crossings are decided by, crossings are, that function is still with the Transport, Regeneration and Climate Change Committee. Now, clearly, you are right in saying that the community plan that we have agreed does talk about investigating various crossings. I think if Tom Finnegan-Smith or Matt Reynolds was here representing Transport, they would say there's a lot of crossings in the system. My understanding is that the community plan that we agreed in March doesn't have that crossing, so I think to get it back on the list, we have a need to present something to either that committee or to council. We as members have heard it, and we will, when we look at the plan, and we look at the plan every month, we will refer to that along with other crossings. There is very little council budget citywide for crossings, but you have raised it, and we will, as I say, as a member of Transport, Regeneration Climate Committee, I will make sure the transport officers know about it, and I will get you a short response in terms of the formal position of that crossing as it is at the moment, and then you and your organisations can, as I say, bring it up at that committee or bring it or take it to full council. At the moment, we don't have the jurisdiction, but that is something that we might have in the future.
Yeah, okay, I'd certainly like to do that, have the opportunity to do that, yes.
Okay. So in terms of the menu of options, so the public engagement toolkit are listed in each of the policy committee's work programmes at Appendix 3. So a copy of each of the latest versions of work programmes included the menu of options on the council website and on the agenda for each of the policy committee meetings. And the list of options builds on the experiences of scrutiny committees and latterly the transition committees, and will continue to develop. So there's a link to the Council of Democracy web pages that contains meeting details, agendas, minutes, etc. You know, if you just Google Sheffield City Council meeting agendas and minutes.
So that's easy to find, is it? You can
Yes.
promise me it's easy to find. Right.
Yes, I really don't want to open this question answers up at the moment. The next I suggest is Mike Hodson here. Yes. Oh gosh, sorry, I couldn't see you, Mike. So can you come to the microphone and ask your questions?
Thank you. Right, thank you. So I'm Mike Hodson, and I'm was Secretary of Carternell Millhouses Community Group, which is now merged with Ecclesall Forum to become the Millhouses Ecclesall and Carternell Community Group. I think that was actually effective from the 1st of October. However, prior to that merger, a few years ago, Mercia School received planning permission, I think in 2017, and quite a lot of discussion took place around the traffic arrangements for the school. Carternell Road is not an easy road, it's narrow, it gets parked up, it's quite steep, and it's used as a rat race by quite a number of people. So local communities were upset at the notion that the traffic arrangements that were being made for the school did not seem adequate. They thought that they underestimated the amount of traffic that actually was taking place, and they underestimated the amount of traffic likely to be generated by the school. So as a result of that, the planning officer, or the planning committee, imposed a condition for a traffic review when the school was 50% full, which happened last year. No traffic review has taken place. So I'm asking the local area committee if it might follow that up and find out what's happening to that traffic review. Is it going to take place? And if it is, how are the local community going to be involved?
Thank you, Mr. Hodson, for that question. Clearly, we don't have access to that information. We will contact the planning department and get a full written response to you. You clearly raise an important point, and we will get a full response back to you, which will be in the minutes. Okay, I intend to take the next three questions together. So I'll hear the three questions and then we'll provide an answer. So can I have Arlene Kersey? This is on cost of living. So Arlene Kersey, Matthew Killier. Maggie Riley. So particular order, Maggie Riley first. Is it? Yeah.
So do I just Riley, I'm a resident of Fullwood, and LAC is taking to address the cost of living emergency as we head into the cold catastrophic mini budget measures set out last week, which will face. I'm advised that our councillors from Ruth and Minesh have submitted a letter to the chair of the community. Spend is focused on genuinely essential public services of benefit to a majority of citizens and is not dissipated inappropriately across nice to have or peripheral projects.
Thank you very much. Okay. Arlene Kersey. Shall I read out Arlene's question? Please could serious consideration be given to an emergency review of the spending plan contained in the area plan to take account of the cost of living crisis? I believe this review should change priorities for spending to give all possible support to all residents in the South West area who are negatively impacted by the crisis, particularly with respect to rising energy and food costs. Thank you to Arlene Kersey for that question. Matthew Killier? Okay. Just checking. So Matthew's question was, will the South West Local Area Committee consider an immediate pausing of its spending and commit to undertaking an emergency spending review with a view to directing funding towards community hubs and other measures designed to help alleviate the cost of living crisis for local residents? So thank you to Mr. Killier for that question. So I think those three questions are all asking the same thing. So I will give an initial response. Clearly, the cost of living crisis is of great concern across Sheffield and great concern to the City Council and to all councillors. I understand that the Strategy Resources Committee and the Senior Management Team have this as a key task and are responding to this challenge on an ongoing basis. I further understand that a cross-party, so that's Labour, Liberal Democrat and Green, cost of committee has been set up, and a cost of living gold command group has been set up, and so they will be making representations for how the council and the council's partners respond to this challenge. So clearly it's very important. There's going to be lots of people in the city really struggling this winter. We know that the energy bills are going to go up. Could be more than 2.5 times, and we've currently got 10% inflation, and as the first questioner said, that's before the Chancellor's fiscal statement of last week, if any bits of it are still standing. Just to remind colleagues of what we did in terms of what our local plan is. So across the city, a resident survey was sent out last September, and there were hundreds of responses across the city, more from the southwest than anywhere else. And that was the basis for how we drew up the community plan. So it was on the basis of responses to residents across the southwest. But it was also informed by the 12 councillors. And it was informed by the officers of the local area committee, and also work that was going on in other parts of the council. So a community plan was drawn up, and we put that to the members in March after a lot of work. And arising from that, at the July meeting, we presented a delivery plan. And so at the March meeting, we had a workshop with residents who were here, and at the July 14th meeting, we had workshops in terms of did they think the delivery plan was there. So the community plan is a collective endeavour. It's designed to be, clearly it's agreed formally by the councillors, but it has had input from the public, and it will continue to be a shared document. And we don't yet know whether it's going to be renewed in a year's time or 2 years' time. But it's certainly the plan which all of our lax spending has to be judged against. So the formal process will be that over our next two public meetings, the January one and the March one, we will be reporting back on what progress we've made against that community plan. Clearly there are bits of that community plan that relate to cost of living, and as we've heard from the first question, there is a letter has gone in from two colleagues saying, can we pause all of our spending at this moment in time? So we got that this a week ago. Can we pause our spending and revise it in the light of new developments since the 14th of July? So what I'm going to suggest to colleagues is that we clearly note that letter. We note these 3 questions, and we will make sure that the 3 presenters of these questions get a full answer. But that we don't pause the spending of the community plan that we agreed at the last meeting, but that when we meet at our regular monthly briefings, we will go through where we are in terms of our progress against this, and there will be many items of spend both within the £100,000 that the LAC has and the various things like ward pot and other bits of money that we will spend, and we will reflect both the letter we've received from Councillor Milsom and these three questions. I have to say that the amount of money delegated to the South West LAC is not a huge part of the council budget. It's really important that council and the city work collectively in terms of tackling the cost of living. So when we come back to you in public in January, you will get an update on what we have allocated on our budgets that are delegated and what we have spent. And clearly, we will take note of those questions, but I do not propose at this moment in time pausing the spending plans that we agreed in principle only in mid-July. Yeah, okay. Yeah.
Sorry, was that me? I like to make a motion. Just in response, I would say there is a note in the minutes of the last local area committee meeting that says a report detailing the delegated spending decisions taken by the community services managers presented to the next local LAC. So when I hear you say in January we'll come back with some information, I feel disappointed that we're not going to get that sooner. And secondly, I would just make the observation that it may be small beer, but it's worth a lot to people out in the community there who are looking for warm spaces to be, places, food banks, places that will help them in these really bad times. So I wouldn't like to think that we're going to go ahead and spend money.
Milson's letter, because what we need is a city strategy, not necessarily something that the South West can handle, if I'm being honest. And if budgets have to be frozen and reviews have to be taken place, a city that's got about £1 billion worth of spend, 100,000 isn't going to get us far. So if the issue is as serious, and I agree with you, there are individuals within our LAC area that no doubt will be facing that uncertainty. The energy costs changed this week. I suggest, in addition to what you proposed, Chair, that goes to strategy and resources, because that will then fit under what is being done at a city-wide level, because clearly we need to influence the city's response to the cost of living crisis. We can do our bit locally, and there's elements of our spend that concentrate on that, and no doubt more information will be provided through you, Chair, in the response. But I think, in addition to what you're proposing, that those 3 questions on the letter goes to the Strategy and Resources Committee.
Thank you. I don't normally invite comments on the floor, but I'm... Sorry, can you go to the microphone?
Okay, so I'm Julie Kitlowski. I represent Totley Library, and we are concerned. So money aside, what we need urgently is for somebody to coordinate all the warm spaces now. It's because we're all running around the library and maybe the churches, also the community hubs that have developed during S17. We're all running around trying to decide if we can be a warm space, how much is that going to cost in our own budget. So the library's budgeting for that. So it may not actually, impinge on your budgets directly in the short term, but we need it now, because otherwise you're going to get all these warm spaces in Totley, Fulwood, that are all opening at the same time, and then nothing's open on Tuesday and something's open on Friday, and it just needs immediate coordination. I don't know if you're the people to do that, but...
No, and well, I mean, I'd say we have a small LAC team here, but your point has been noted, and we'll make sure that the coordination that we do as members and officers will be found to it will be directed to the people who need to hear it. Councillor Minesh.
Thanks, Chair. I mean, the point that we made in the letter, and I think Councillor Mohammed has misunderstood it, whether intentionally or not, is not about centralising our response to the city to strategy and resources, but that at a South West level and at a South West LAC level, this is an emergency. We need to recognise it as such. We need to consider all plans and all spending in line with the cost of living crisis. It's not enough to just say the city, at a citywide level, we're having a response to the cost of living crisis. When we do have a budget, when we do have responsibilities, we should be realigning those with an emergency when we are in an emergency situation. It is as simple as that. So I don't think it's good enough to just note the contents of the letter. I don't think it's good enough to come to it when you said yourself, Chair, that we do look at the plan every meeting. We should look at the plan every meeting. We should review the plan every meeting to see whether it's appropriate and whether, in a time of national and international crisis, it needs a review.
I mean, the question that came there, basically, I would say reinforces my view that we don't have control over libraries, but we need to influence. That group is set up and it's chaired by the leader of the council, and it's attended by the more senior officers of the council. So they've got the overview right across. What we have as a central LAC is some pretty artificial boundaries that some communities don't. So if you live in, for example, Crooks, depending on what side of the road you live on, the Springvale Road, one bit's in this LAC and the other isn't, but that community is one community. For me, it needs a coordinated response, and that's my suggestion. Yes, we can do our bit locally, and no doubt, at the next meeting, I've still not seen sight of the letter, by the way, so I thought it might be in common courtesy that if you're going to propose something, that you send a letter to all 10 members that haven't seen the letter. That's my suggestion, that you need a coordinated response. Yes, we will do our bit, but we need to know what the left hand is doing when the right hand is doing. And clearly, we will want to work with that cross-party committee or group, working group that's been set up to look at cost of living. And yes, we will play our part. And if it's decided that all LACs, because many LACs are meeting, and if all the LACs are agreeing in a certain way, we can do it. And no doubt, like you say, yeah, we'll review stuff, but Chair, as you say, that plan that we had does look at cost of living. So it's not that this thing, and the other thing I will say is that there are some important aspects. You can see from the questions today, the priorities that people have. They shared them last time, and they are sharing them here, and not everyone can come to a meeting like tonight. As we've seen, 3 questions were tabled, but only the two of the people that tabled those questions are not being able to make it. So it's about us as city councillors reflecting the wishes of people right across the board. And there's a number of issues and things that people have wanted that we have to also deal with. And, it's a difficult juggling act. That's why I'm saying there is a bigger picture for the whole of Sheffield, and we should work within that. And the South West will no doubt play its part. We've got some pretty senior councillors sat around this table, at least 2 of us, 3 of us on the Strategy Resources Committee.
Okay, Councillor Nelson.
Thank you, Chair. I want to agree with my colleague, Councillor Parrick, in that I don't think that simply referring to this to strategy and resources is an appropriate course of action when people have raised this directly with this committee, and this committee has been given a certain degree of autonomy to manage its budget. I think redirecting it back centrally is an odd course of action in view of what we've asked to do. Apologies to Councillor Mohammed that you haven't seen the letter. The letter was sent to the Chair, which we thought was a normal course of action, really, that the Chair would have first sight of the letter, and it's really up to up to him to have first sight of that and to be able to consider it in that capacity. I don't know why it hasn't been circulated to everybody, but we thought that was an appropriate course of action to address the chair first and give him first sight of that. In terms of actually practically what we're asking for here, it's not, we're not trying to enact some screeching government U-turn here. It's, yes, there has been an agreement on how money should be spent, but the circumstances were quite different when that plan was being drawn up, and I don't think anybody was thinking quite how they are today about the severity of the situation that we're facing. We don't know how many community hubs, or whatever we end up calling them, warm spaces, welcoming places. We don't know how many can be supported in the southwest area. I do know for a start that in my ward, Crooks and Crossball, there's no library, there's no obvious immediate community building to use as a warm place. We don't know yet what the centralised plan for that is. We do know there's a gold team that's already come together to look at this, but we haven't had any information about how this will actually look in our communities. So the reason for asking to pause at this stage on evaluating how our money is being dedicated is that something new has come forward, and if we've spent half our budget by the time we realise just how serious it is, it might be too late to redirect resources where they're really needed. In terms of things being already on the plan that could, where adjustments, I think, Chair, perhaps you were suggesting that adjustments could be made as we go along this year, but there's one item in particular which is working to support development of community hubs, which had actually been nominated for work in 2023-24, and I would specifically like to ask that we urgently look at bringing that item forward as a priority, as it has no money currently allocated to it. So if we had to pick and choose one thing to bargain for, I think it would probably be that, especially as I've talked to people already here this evening on some of the stalls who have said that they're not sure how people are going to, how some of our community organisations are going to keep going with having to heat buildings or pay increased room hire to cover the cost of heating. So that's just a bit more by way of explaining where we're coming from, and just a final request that we consider it more immediately in this committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Austin.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, thank you. I mean, I must say, I share to an extent, I share Councillor Bregg's frustration at the urgency of the problem and the difficulty in terms of getting the council to react quickly sometimes. I appreciate. I don't. It sounds wrong if I say, 11 years on the council, and I've been frustrated for the whole of those 11 years. I think in terms of the pace of action sometimes. So I'm not criticising anybody for being a new member of the council and not knowing how it works. In some ways, not knowing how it works, you have more reasonable expectations than those of us who've been around for a long time. But that said, there was a group set up by Stratton Resources, a Gold Command cross-party, that has met a number of times and is discussing this. And my frustration really is that we don't have a clearer steer coming from that group to the LACs regarding our expectations and who should wander in. No. Good evening, Terry. I was just saying, I'm a little bit frustrated that we don't have a clearer steer in the LACs as to what the expectations is of us in terms of dealing with the cost of living crisis. But the issue has been brought up in a public question, and so that's what we're discussing now. But there is a cross-party group that the council has set up, and I do hope that we kind of coordinate through that. As regards to this particular committee and our particular duties that we have been given, and we need to take seriously, the amount of resource there is tiny, but the role there is very much around public engagement, civic institutions, getting the council and the community working together in a positive way. And I think that is going to be vital in any crisis. I mean, the way we saw in the COVID pandemic, the strength of the local community and local groups coming together, supporting each other. It was phenomenal. And, you know, we may be facing something similar to that again with the cost of living. I just think, well, okay, kind of the local stuff is what we can sacrifice. I think it's the wrong way to go about it. The local stuff is going to be absolutely vital in terms of keeping those links and building the strength in civic society. So, you know, please don't just throw everything away. Obviously, we do need to look at the proposal on hubs and if we can advance that, then that would be brilliant. But the solution isn't to tear up what we have; it's to build on it, and it's to build on it coordinated with the rest of the council. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Huggan.
We had a meeting last week, and I deliberately asked Councillor Milson to send me the copy of the letter, which I've still not received, and I believe other members haven't. I didn't ask it to go through other people. I asked her to send it to me because it seemed to be that the letter first went to the press, then went to Andy. That shows how serious the matter was, that you're treating the budgetary item, because when we have budgetary items, they have to go through various ringers such as equality, etc. As Councillor Milson has said, that there isn't an obvious place in Crooks where we could have a warm place. That means that I'm very worried if we rush ahead with this, that Crooks and Crossball once again miss out something which is sorely needed. We need to do three proposals to make sure that they are not, that any motion comes to the council, it has to be a proper motion, it has to go through the monitor office, finance team, and also has to go to diversities to make sure that it's not adversely in the community. And as the proposal currently stands, doesn't adversely affect Crooks and Crossball, because we don't.
To each of the 7 LACs, or is it just the Southwest LAC? And as other colleagues have said, a proper coordinated response is already in train by the leader of the council, strategy and resources, and the chief executive, so that things have been done. But more importantly, at the community level, already in our budget and already in our proposals are supports for communities in different ways. And the area manager will be outlining some of those, what we've done so far, in the next item on the agenda. We are very sensitive to supporting our communities in lots of ways with our limited resources, and we'll carry on doing that. Having had this request come to us at the very end of last week, sort of 4 or 5 days ago, we haven't had time to examine the budget, but we will do that and see if within our budget there are areas where we can reprioritise some of our spending. We always intended to do that anyway. The notional headings on the various topics were notional headings, so there is some scope to team and label, but there isn't much money in the pot to do significant amounts. That is why the significant amounts and impetus comes through the goal command that's already been set up by the Strategy and Resources Committee. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, can I respond to points that were made directly to me? Can I respond to Councillor Hodgson's points that were made directly to me?
No, we've come to the end of public question, the time for public questions. I would just reiterate that we will give a full written reply to the 3 questioners who answer these very important questions. I will take it I will take on board the fact that I will work with Tanya in terms of our next members meeting for the 12 of us, that we get an update in terms of where we are with the community plan, and to consider the proposals made by Councillor Milson in the letter to myself, as alongside those 3 questions at that point. And I also commit that at the January public meeting there will be an item on the community plan and the delivery plan with an update on spend, and that clearly will reflect will reflect how we responded to the cost of living, along with other items that have been brought up by members of the public. With that, I propose to move on, and I apologise to those of you who got questions written, but I think we need to move on. We've run out of that time allotted for that item. So the next item is item 7, update on South West LAC community plan. Hand over to South West LAC manager to provide an update on progress made with the community plan over the last 2 months. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a summary of the headline progress made with the South West Local Area Committee plan since July of this year. So under the key themes, starting with, if I just move this on, sorry. Starting with transport and highways, we have implemented traffic calming measures through the installation of vehicle activated signs for each ward. So on rotation, in terms of location around the ward, data will be retrieved from these to measure the effectiveness, and if necessary, locations can be changed on review. Under road safety measures, we also have 20 mile per hour zones. Under current implementation, we have crosspool currently being built, and this is due for completion by the end of this year. Additional zones include Cottonall and Fulwood, both of which will need to go under public consultation. Fulwood we're looking at consulting on by the end of November, potentially. And the consultation will involve letter drops through letterboxes, along with the plan. And for Cottonall, the consultation is looking at potentially February 23. Under local environment, we have identified 2 hotspot areas of fly tipping within the local area committee area. So we've got Sheep Hill Road and Clough Lane, and we're currently working through solutions to try and reduce some of the problems there. And in addition to that, we're working through solutions to improve the brig sites within the area. For example, Redmires, so designs have been created to help improve the site, including potentially hard standing, better signage, and we're looking at sourcing a textile recycling bank as well for the site. So these options are being costed for approval. Moving on to community and neighbourhoods theme. So since July, we've successfully sought youth funding from youth services committed to the South West Lock area. So we will be initiating the rollout of free open access youth work activities for each ward. This will likely be in the form of an offer of a weekly session of a youth club or non-competitive sports, and the details are really being defined for each ward. We're looking at rolling this out this year for a period of 22 weeks or so, and this will feed into the longer term youth provision for the area moving forward. And lastly, we have just a note to say ward pot applications are open, and these are grants available to local voluntary community projects that want to make a difference in the local community. Some examples of ward applications that we've supported so far include a series of football sessions at Bingham Park being delivered, started last week. We've got a Friends of Millhouses Park Sensory Garden renovation works that's been supported, a tree trail at Willowbrook Park. So if you would like to apply, please do get in touch, and there is a slide in the papers with our contact details. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, so I suppose it's really just for members. Any quick comments on any of that? If not, can we note that? Item 8, just to remind, item 8, the next South West LAC public meeting will be on Tuesday, 10th of January 2023 at 7 p.m. We haven't yet determined the venue. We're expecting it to be in Ecclesall Ward, but we haven't got a venue yet. You've already heard about one item, a progress report on the community plan and where we are in terms of budget allocation and spend, but also as part of the consultation on the local plans, so the city plan, so where Sheffield will build its new houses and its new offices and such like. Part of the consultation will be a presentation to this LAC. So there'll probably be a stand as well for you to ask questions. So part of that consultation, so please look at that very important document for the city over the next 15 years. So that will be on the agenda. And with that, I close the formal part of the meeting and stop the webcasting. As you can see, we've